I thought saving that woman on the highway would be just another good deed in my messy life as a single dad. But when my phone rang 3 days later, and I heard a voice I never expected, everything I believed about my past, my struggles, and my future shattered completely. You know that feeling when life keeps punching you in the gut and you're barely standing, but you keep telling yourself tomorrow will be different? That was me 3 months ago. Derek Martinez, 32 years old, and I was living proof that sometimes doing your best still isn't enough. My world had shrunk down to a cramped studio apartment that smelled like instant coffee and broken dreams, where I'd sit at my kitchen table every night, staring at a stack of bills that seemed to multiply like some cruel magic trick. The centerpiece of my disaster was a court document that might as well have been written in my own blood. Custody papers that said I could only see my 6-year-old daughter Lily every other weekend. Every other weekend. Imagine having your heart ripped out and handed back to you on a schedule. That's what it felt like every time I had to watch her little face pressed against her mother's car window as they drove away. Her tiny hand waving goodbye like she was going to war instead of just going home. I wasn't a bad father. I need you to understand that. I never hurt Lily, never neglected her, never chose anything over her well-being. My crime was being poor. My crime was that when her mother remarried a successful accountant with a house in the suburbs and a college fund already started, the court decided that financial stability trumped unconditional love. They looked at my bank account instead of my heart, and somehow that made sense to them. So there I was, working myself into the ground trying to change their minds. Nights, I was a security guard at a corporate office building, walking empty hallways and watching cameras show me nothing but darkness. Days when I should have been sleeping, I was driving delivery trucks, hauling packages across the city until my hands cramped around the steering wheel. Every dollar I earned went straight to my lawyer, this sharp-dressed woman who spoke in legal terms and charged me $300 every time she answered my phone calls. The exhaustion was killing me slowly. I'd catch myself falling asleep at red lights, jolting awake when horns honked behind me. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a stranger with hollow eyes and stubble that I was too tired to shave. But I kept pushing because I had this image in my head of walking into that courtroom with enough money to prove I could provide for my daughter, to show them that love and determination could overcome a bank balance. 3 days before everything changed, I just finished another soul-crushing 12-hour shift watching empty offices through security monitors. The rain was coming down like the sky was angry at the world, and I was driving home in my beat-up Honda, windshield wipers squealing their protest against the downpour. It was past midnight, and the highway was a ribbon of black asphalt stretching through the darkness, punctuated only by the occasional truck barreling past me in the opposite direction. That's when I saw the red glow in the distance. Not the soft red of taillights, but the harsh, urgent red of emergency flashers cutting through the rain. As I got closer, my headlights illuminated something that made my stomach drop. A silver sedan had skidded off the road and rolled, ending up on its side in the shallow ditch that ran alongside the highway. The car was crumpled like a piece of paper, steam rising from under the twisted hood. My first instinct was to keep driving. I know how that sounds, but you have to understand where my head was at. I was already running on fumes, already late getting home, already behind on everything that mattered. I had exactly 5 hours before I needed to be at my delivery job, and I couldn't afford to lose another day's pay. Plus, someone else would stop. Someone with more time, more energy, more to give. That's what I told myself as I started to press harder on the gas pedal. But then I heard it. Even through the rain and my closed windows, I heard a voice calling for help. Not screaming, not panicking, but calling with the kind of desperate hope that cuts right through all your excuses and grabs you by the throat. It was a woman's voice, and she was trapped in there, and suddenly nothing else mattered. Not my exhaustion, not my schedule, not my problems. I pulled over and ran into the rain. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. I learned that the hard way. You'd think saving someone's life would earn you some cosmic points, maybe a little break from the constant beating life was giving me. Instead, it was like I'd painted a target on my back for every piece of bad luck floating around looking for a place to land. The next morning, still soaked to the bone from the night before, and running on maybe 2 hours of sleep, I showed up to my delivery job 30 minutes late. My supervisor, this heavy-set guy named Rick who treated punctuality like a religion, was waiting for me in the parking lot with his arms crossed and a pink slip already filled out. "Martinez, you're done," he said before I could even explain. "This is the third time this month you've been late, and I'm tired of making excuses for you." I tried to tell him about the accident, about pulling an unconscious woman from a car that could have exploded at any moment, about staying until the paramedics arrived to make sure she was breathing. But Rick just shook his head like I was telling him I'd been abducted by aliens. "Save the stories for someone who cares," he said. "Turn in your uniform and clean out your truck." Standing there in that parking lot, holding my delivery uniform in my hands like a flag of surrender, I felt something break inside me that I didn't know could break any further. I'd done the right thing. I'd saved a woman's life, and somehow that had cost me everything I'd been fighting for. The math didn't add up, but life rarely does when you're losing. Without the delivery job, I was down to just my security guard income, which was barely enough to keep my apartment and put gas in my car, let alone pay my lawyer. I called her that afternoon, my hands shaking as I dialed, knowing what I had to do but hoping maybe she'd give me more time. "I need to postpone the retainer payment," I said when she picked up, "just for a couple weeks until I find another job." The silence on the other end of the line lasted forever. When she finally spoke, her voice had that professional coldness that lawyers use when they're about to ruin your day. "Derek, we've talked about this. I can't continue representing you without payment. Your custody hearing is in 11 days, and if you can't pay by Friday, I'll have to withdraw from your case." 11 days. I had 11 days to find a job, earn enough money to pay a lawyer, and somehow convince a judge that I deserved to have my daughter back. It felt like trying to climb Mount Everest in flip-flops during a blizzard. That night, Lily called me from her mother's house. She always called at 8 o'clock sharp, right before her bedtime, and hearing her voice was simultaneously the best and worst part of every day. "Daddy," she said, her 6-year-old voice bubbling with excitement, "guess what? I got picked to be the narrator in our school play next week. I get to wear a special dress and everything." My heart swelled with pride and then immediately cracked in half. "That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." I tried to keep my voice steady, tried not to let her hear the desperation that was eating me alive. "You're going to come watch me, right? It's next Friday at 2 o'clock. Mommy said she'd save you a seat in the front row." The hope in her voice was like a knife twisting in my chest. Friday. The same day I was supposed to pay my lawyer. The same day everything would fall apart if I couldn't find a miracle. "Of course I'll be there," I heard myself saying. I wouldn't miss it for the world. It was a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. But what else could I tell her? That Daddy was failing at everything that mattered. That the system was rigged against people like us. That love wasn't enough when you couldn't afford to prove it. After we hung up, I sat in my dark apartment and cried for the first time in months. Real tears, the kind that come from a place so deep you didn't know it existed. I'd spent so long being strong, being the guy who never gave up, that I'd forgotten how to let myself break. But that night, surrounded by unpaid bills and rejection letters, I finally understood what rock bottom felt like. It was 3 days later when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. When you're behind on every bill in existence, unknown phone numbers usually mean debt collectors or automated voices telling you about your car's extended warranty. But something made me swipe to accept the call. Maybe just the desperate hope that it might be a job opportunity responding to one of the dozens of applications I'd submitted. "Is this Derek Martinez?" The voice was soft, feminine, with a slight tremor that made my stomach clench. "The man who helped someone on Highway 47 3 nights ago?" My blood turned to ice water. This was it. This was the moment they'd tracked me down for not staying to give a statement, for leaving before the police arrived. I'd seen enough crime shows to know that leaving the scene of an accident, even when you're the hero, can still get you in trouble. Who is this?" I managed to croak out. "Please don't hang up," she said quickly, like she could sense I was about to bolt. "My name is Elena Rodriguez. I'm the woman you pulled from that car." The world tilted sideways. I had to sit down on my couch because my legs suddenly felt like jelly. Is, are you okay? I mean, you were unconscious when the ambulance took you, and I was rambling, my brain trying to catch up with what was happening. I'm okay because of you. Her voice cracked slightly. Derek, I've been trying to find you for 3 days. The hospital security footage was grainy, and you left before anyone could get your information. I had to call every Derek Martinez in the city until I found the right voice. I still didn't understand why she was calling. People don't usually track down Good Samaritans just to say thank you, especially not ones who flee the scene like criminals. Look, I'm glad you're all right, but I really can't afford any legal complications right now. If there's paperwork or, I'm a judge, Derek. Those 4 words hit me like a physical blow. A judge. The woman I'd saved was a judge. My mouth went completely dry as 1,000 possibilities raced through my mind. None of them good. Judges probably had connections with police departments. They definitely knew about people who left accident scenes. This was going to destroy any chance I had left of getting Lily back. I can hear you panicking, she said gently, but you're not in trouble. I called because I needed to understand who you are. The kind of person who stops on a deserted highway in a thunderstorm to save a stranger. The kind of person who stays until help arrives and then disappears without wanting credit or recognition. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I just did what anyone would do. No, Derek, you didn't. 3 other cars passed that accident before you stopped. I saw their headlights sweep past while I was trapped in there, praying someone would help me. You were the only one who chose to care. There was something in her voice, a weight that went beyond gratitude, like she was building up to something bigger than a thank you call. I looked you up, she continued. Judge Rodriguez. Elena, I had to know who my guardian angel was. I found your custody case in the system. My heart stopped completely. A family court judge had looked up my case. The case I was losing because I couldn't afford proper representation. The case that was going to keep me from my daughter because the system had decided that money mattered more than love. Look, whatever you think you know about me, I know that you lost primary custody of your 6-year-old daughter Lily because of financial instability. I know you're working 2 jobs to pay for legal representation. I know your custody hearing is in 8 days, and your lawyer just withdrew from your case this morning. She knew about my lawyer withdrawing? That had happened less than 4 hours ago. How could she possibly? Are you investigating me? I'm trying to understand something that doesn't make sense to me. Her voice was stronger now, more focused. The man who saved my life is the same man the system says isn't fit to raise his own child. I've been a family court judge for 7 years, Derek, and I've seen real unfit parents. You're not one of them. I couldn't speak. This was surreal, like I'd fallen into some alternate universe where the people with power actually cared about people like me. I want to meet you, she said, in person. I'm still in the hospital recovering from surgery on my leg, but I need to look you in the eye and ask you something important. What could you possibly want to ask me? I want to ask you if you'll let me help you the way you helped me. The silence stretched between us like a bridge I was afraid to cross. Help from a judge? It sounded too good to be true, which in my experience meant it probably was. Why would you do that? I whispered. Because 3 nights ago, when I was trapped in that car, I thought I was going to die. I thought I'd never see my own daughter again. And you changed that. You gave me back my life, Derek. Maybe it's time someone gave you back yours. Meeting Elena Rodriguez in that hospital room was like stepping into a dream I was afraid to believe in. She was smaller than I'd expected, propped up in bed with her leg elevated and wrapped in bandages, but her eyes held a strength that filled the entire room. When I walked in, she smiled at me like I was visiting an old friend instead of a stranger whose life I'd accidentally stumbled into. You look exactly like I imagined, she said, gesturing for me to sit in the chair beside her bed. Tired, overwhelmed, but with kind eyes. The kind of eyes that stop for strangers in the rain. I still felt like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for this to turn into some elaborate trap or cosmic joke. I don't understand why you're doing this. You don't even know me. I know the most important thing about you, she said simply. I know who you are when no one is watching, when there's nothing to gain and everything to lose. That night, you had every reason to keep driving, and you stopped anyway. That tells me more about your character than any background check ever could. She explained that she couldn't directly influence my custody case because of ethical conflicts, but she'd done something even better. Her husband, Marcus Rodriguez, was one of the city's most successful family law attorneys, the kind of lawyer I could never afford in a million years. He'd agreed to take my case pro bono after Elena told him what I'd done. Pro bono means free, Derek, completely free. No payment plans, no future obligations. Just one parent helping another parent because it's the right thing to do. I cried in that hospital room. I'm not ashamed to admit it. After months of carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, of fighting a system that seemed designed to crush people like me, someone was offering me a lifeline I'd never dared to hope for. Elena reached over and squeezed my hand while I sobbed, and she cried too, because she understood what it meant to almost lose everything that mattered. The custody hearing 7 days later was nothing like the disaster I'd been expecting. Marcus Rodriguez walked into that courtroom like he owned it, carrying a briefcase full of evidence about my character that I didn't even know existed. He'd tracked down the paramedics who responded to Elena's accident, gotten statements about how I'd stayed to make sure she was stable. He'd found my former coworkers who testified about my work ethic and reliability. He'd even gotten letters from my neighbors talking about how they'd seen me with Lily, how patient and loving I was as a father. But the moment that changed everything was when Elena herself appeared in the courtroom. She was supposed to be on medical leave, but she'd gotten herself discharged against doctor's orders and showed up on crutches to testify on my behalf. Your Honor, she said, addressing the judge with the kind of authority that comes from years on the bench, I'm not here as a colleague, but as a mother who owes her life to this man. Derek Martinez made a split-second decision that revealed his true character. He chose compassion over convenience, selflessness over self-preservation. These are exactly the qualities we should want in a parent. The judge awarded me joint custody that day, not just supervised visits or weekend privileges, but real, meaningful time with my daughter. 50-50 custody, which meant Lily would spend half her life with me, half with her mother. It wasn't everything I'd wanted, but it was everything I'd needed. I picked Lily up from school that afternoon for the first time in 8 months. When she saw me standing by the playground fence, she ran toward me like a tiny missile, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders and her pigtails flying behind her. Daddy, you came! You really came! I caught her in my arms and spun her around until we were both dizzy and laughing. I promised I'd never miss your school play, didn't I? You're the best daddy in the whole world, she whispered against my ear, and in that moment, I felt like maybe she was right. Elena kept her promises too. Not only did she help me get my daughter back, but when she recovered from her injuries and returned to work, she offered me a position as security coordinator for the family court building. It was steady work with benefits, the kind of job that would let me provide for Lily without working myself into an early grave. But the most beautiful part of this whole story happened 6 months later, at Elena's daughter Sophia's 7th birthday party. Watching Lily and Sophia play together in Elena's backyard, two little girls whose fathers had almost lost everything but found each other instead, I finally understood what Elena had meant that day in the hospital. We'd both saved each other's lives that night on the Highway 47. I'd pulled her from a burning car, but she'd pulled me from something much worse, a life where love wasn't enough, where good people finished last, where doing the right thing only led to more suffering. Sometimes the universe doesn't give you what you deserve. Sometimes it gives you exactly what you need, wrapped in a moment of choice that changes everything forever.